Okay, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. So this is the anniversary, the 10th Symposium Human Motion Project. Title, as you all know, is Electronic Fetal Monitoring and Human Motion Monitoring in the Light of Regulatory Science. We will see how many of you actually know what regulatory science is as we go. Am I loud enough or should I take a
Not really.
No. Okay. Is this better now?
No.
No? Okay, excellent. Okay, is it better now? Yeah. Okay, so let me jump in a very brief overview. Many of you will know this. I'm representing here 3 organizations today. One is somehow the university, and there have been some changes, so there have been rearrangements. There is now a new school for computation, information, and technology, and it embraces a couple of faculties, mathematics, computer engineering, electrical engineering, and then the use of software, to cover all the aspects that are needed to really make, I think, innovations in healthcare, and a couple of other schools. So that's the campus here. Well, we have a spin-off company, a very old spin-off company actually, that I co-founded back in 2000, so 22 years ago, like 50 meters away from here. And this company, based on the research that has been done, has 2 product lines. One is electronic fetal monitoring, the other one is human motion monitoring. But we also do research, and this organization is the Loris Center for Multiple Sclerosis Research, the Human Motion Institute, that originated from a collaboration between the Technical University of Munich and the company. Now the platforms, very, very briefly, that we have, I said, it's fetal monitoring, activity monitoring. So there's going to be a lot of discussion about fetal monitoring, and I'm going to be very brief here. So over the years, thanks to a distribution partner that we found only on GE Healthcare, we've been able to bring a central monitoring system with online algorithms to do fetal heart rate monitoring in the market. So in Munich, I think every bigger hospital actually has this system. In Germany, around a third of the hospital is using the system, but it's also available in Japan and South America. And hopefully, we'll talk about this sooner or later also in some Africa. But we do have also a platform for activity monitoring. The technology here that was also born somehow in this region with early applications in multiple sclerosis, and we also talked about this, has been around for some time, and this is actually some multi-sensor package embedded in the belt buckle, and we will hear about this later on. And the basic idea was based on a need for improvement of outcome measures in MS, that objective monitoring that happens in the real world with patients over weeks and months could really make a big change in clinical trial methodology. Okay, so the title of today is somehow different, which is Extreme Ends of Regulatory Science. And well, what you see here is just a picture overview. I'll just go to this part over here. For those who do not know what is regulatory science, can you see that? Yeah. So the scientific field that deals with the development and application of scientific and technical knowledge to inform and support public health and safety regulations. It encompasses a wide range of disciplines, including epidemiology, toxicology, pharmacology, and many others, to provide evidence-based decision-making in the regulation of products such as drugs, medicines, and chemicals. And this definition came from ChatGPT, so I was very impressed, I have to say. And then I said, well, this is an artificial intelligence. This is not a true intelligence like my intelligence. Right? And I had this brilliant idea to say, let's take the extreme ends of regulatory science, to show what happens if there is a lack of regulation, what kind of horrible things could happen, or if there's too much regulation, what horrible things could happen. And then I have to say I was shocked when I then asked ChatGPT, well, what is extreme ends of regulatory science? And it said, well, complete absence of regulation leading to chaos and potential harm to public health and safety. And then over-regulation resulting in excessive bureaucracy, stifling innovation and progress. And then I found embarrassing on my own intelligence, and so that the only last point was that ChatGPT was not able to come up with the idea to say, well, let's have focus on this. But very interesting. So this is regulatory science. And what you see here are now some selected extreme ends in the focus areas. Now on the right-hand side, we see some fines for bribery and for other things. US only, I mean, you see, we talk about 600 million euros or dollars, 1 to 2 billion euros that these companies have paid because of misconduct, the bribery, and these kind of things. In one year, one country, in this one here is one company in the US, as an example. I mean, you should not blame the companies, but it's really an indication that something goes extremely wrong with the regulations of parts of this pharma business. And not only companies are involved, there are many players involved, but this is severe. And a member of the scientific board of the Fetal Center, who used to be head of neurology in Oxford, he asked me, Martin, bring this to the attention of the Technical University of Munich and to the attention of the German health minister, because these numbers and the problems were responsible for the bumpy start we had in the Fetal Center when we tried to educate the field that some of the currently used outcome measures are very, very bad. And there was really an attempt to suppress this. And so that's one somehow extreme, and the other extreme end is United States, and we call it fetal monitoring. So if you want to really have a horrible article, extremely well done, a bridge too far, then they illustrate here that the driving forces for change in decision making are well, liability topics. I mean, court cases where we talk about 10, 50 million euros for misconduct in the ethics part, which has a major impact on what's going on in the United States. And then we somehow are in the middle, and this is now Europe. And even here we have some extreme parts. There's a new regulation called NDR, medical device regulation, with the idea to somehow improve now the situation in Europe, where there was the impression that medical devices are not regulated appropriately. And what happened is maybe there is a good law, but the implementation is a complete disaster. And we had a scientific collaboration with a group in Dresden. We have also someone from this group here. And it's the first chair for regulatory science in Germany to try to find academic ways to deal with this mess. And so there will be delays, a couple of years until this is all implemented. And we are somehow in the middle of this. On the one hand, as researchers, on the other hand, actually as a company, trying to survive this process. Now, in the process of trying to survive this process, we got in touch with some Dutch, with some Dutch law firms, old law firms, I think, Amsterdam, and they educated me about some professional language, how they call the process currently, and they educated me about FUBAR and clusterfuck. So that was their definition. What's going on currently here in Europe, and it's really bad. And today we're not trying to contribute to this, but we're trying to have somehow an island of coherent thinking by trying to find what may be really interesting, namely a positive, forward-looking way in the middle here that combines somehow progress in medical device regulation and the pharma business. And that could be by looking at wearables like the Activate or other mobile sensors that could be used for telemonitoring in such a way that at the end products will go on the market that are really helpful and useful for patients with outcomes that are meaningful and can be connected in the real world of the patient. And we start with now a group of talks that are dealing with obstetrics, including gender monitoring. The second part is going to be about human emotion, and then we move into physical activity in general. Come to the last talk of today, which is going to be, in a sense, the most important one. We see a number of students here, and as we all know, they are the future, so they are going to observe us what we're talking about here, and hopefully, well, they will enter these fields, and when we are old, yeah, we have a good generation of upcoming technologies and researchers and clinicians that will help to fix the mess. I think that the older ones are responsible for. Okay, so that was my start. I'm 2 minutes ahead of time, which is good. And now we hand over to the first speaker, who is not here. He's sitting in Copenhagen, Olaf Pedersen. And I would like to ask Wolfgang or someone to make sure that he can guide in. I did a brief explanation. So we got in touch with him because of his work when he was still working in August. And he will explain this in more detail later on, where he has implemented telemedicine. The plan was to do this in the form of a clinical trial, but then this did not work, and they actually had to monitor them 400 highest risk pregnancies, and this was recently published, and I think this is an extremely important paper. And the idea of also today is that we bring together different groups from different countries to learn from each other, so that at the end we have a manageable solution that is okay with the regulatory side, that can help save lives. Okay, now Wolfgang, you can help me to make sure that Olaf is able to do this talk.
Can you say something?
Yes. Hello. Hello, Martin. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Very.
I'll just continue saying something.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, I could hear that there's some feedback.
Great.
Yeah. Yes. So I will just keep talking a little as a test. It's unfortunately a bit or very difficult to hear what you're saying, Martin, and but I hope that you can hear me now. Okay, so should I just continue? So I don't have any sound from your side. Martin, could you give me a thumbs up or whatever if I just should proceed? Yeah. I see somebody running up the stage. So yeah. So should I just continue? Okay. Well, okay. So Martin, thank you very much for both the very kind introduction and for the invitation here to give just a brief update from what's going on in Denmark regarding our home monitoring and also our work or wrestling with our national registers. So as some of you might know, we started doing home monitoring using the Monica or G device back in 2010. but GE withdraw this project. So we set up a national tender, which in 2 years ago was won by Nemo Healthcare with their new device, which we then have tried to implement as a platform in Denmark. We so far have been using an open source platform which we developed ourselves for the Monica device, but we will turn to other platforms at a web-based platform called Ambuflex, or the Epic solution which we have in the eastern part of Denmark, which we are trying to use as a platform for collecting questionnaires and also other health data. And then the Nemo system will transfer the CDGs directly into our hospital systems, not through one of these platforms, but directly. So this is a slide I said I used last year, but in reality, I mean, even though it's now 2 years ago that we had a decision by the tender, it's just so slowly to get things working. Just this part is not as much legislation. It's much more than different parts of our organization, especially the IT department, should then, I mean, collaborate across borders, where they normally don't collaborate. And that's just slow things down. But I won't share too many frustrations about this. Things are moving ahead, and we have started using the Monica device, which we're actually very happy about. And we think it has a huge potential. So in the meantime, we have done that for many years, and that was one of the reasons why I met, or Martin reached out for me, is could we somehow develop a decision support system for CDD assessments based on artificial intelligence or machine learning. And that's what we have been working quite a bit with. And one of the backgrounds is that, at least by some people, the Nordic countries and the health registers, they are stated as a paradise for epidemiologic research. One of the reasons is that in all the Nordic countries, every person by birth or immigration is given a unique personal ID number, which will then link all contacts to healthcare systems throughout the whole life until death, which actually helps a lot. And we have a lot of registers. I'll come back to this. So some claim that this is the scientist's wet dream. As I'll show you, I mean, you also have to be a bit, I mean, suspicious, and sometimes it's actually a nightmare. And I'll come back to this. But briefly about our organization, Denmark, we are only close to 6 million people. And importantly, we are divided in 5 regions. And within these regions, we have 21 maternity hospitals. So, I mean, we are a whole country about the size of bigger Hamburg, which should make things a lot easier. And then we have all these registers. We have 90 national clinical quality databases, 40 national health registers, a lot of registers about social data, and then we have all the regional and local registers. So we have a lot of registers using these unique personal identifier to link things across registers. One of the registers is the National Fetal Medicine Database, which I'm the chairman of. all departments, so all 21 maternity departments in Denmark use the same system for registration of all prenatal ultrasound registrations. It's a kind of electronic healthcare system. It's developed by a German company based in Munich, Astraea, and we're very happy about this system. So it was actually implemented at all departments because all departments thought this was the same system. And this system have a functionality where it can each night transfer data to a national server, where data then are linked from the national birth register with all the outcomes of the birth, the national patient register where we have all registrations of all diagnoses and treatments, inpatient and outpatient. And also we have a national genetic register where all genetic results are stored. So within our national field medicine database, all these data from each pregnancy and then each baby being born are linked so that we can track the babies from the first prenatal scan until 10 years after the birth. So we have a lot of nice data there. Regarding the CTGs, we also have a kind of similar system. All departments in Denmark choose to use the same system for display and storage of a CTG, and that's called Milu. And I mean, again, it's not that we are somehow associated with Milu, but all departments decided that they would use the same system, which then gives opportunities. So all the CTGs from each of the 21 hospitals are then stored in a server, and it's a regional server. So we have 5 regions. So each region have a server where all the CTGs for many years has been stored, which I mean should make things a lot easier. So the status is that in the national field medicine database, we currently have data on more than 650,000 pregnancies in an 11 years period. And we hopefully this summer here, we will make a big leap, and then we will have a new version of the national field medicine database where we'll have close to 900,000 pregnancies from 2008 to 22. And within the field medicine database, we have, as I said, all the detailed registration about the pregnancy, the outcome, or also postnatal life and congenital informations and other diagnoses which might be given. And then we have regional data storage for all CTGs for the same time period, which then, I mean, the idea of linking those things is obvious. But there's a small but very important difference between having a national database like the field medicine database, which is a national system based for quality development, also research, contains all these clinical data. And when a database is classified as a national quality database, then applicants basically have a right to get the data. So if you apply for data, almost all person will actually get the data, which from a quality development and research perspective is a very, very good situation. And that's because there's a legislation supporting the national databases. But then, even though that we have a national or regional clinical system, they are then, I mean, under another kind of legislation. So for applying for the CTD data, that should go through the regional legislative system, and not only to the hospitals, but also to the local university. So we have to make collaboration contacts with each hospital. The head of each department must approve this. And so even if we have all the legal formalities in place, then I mean, some persons at each department decide whether they agree on delivering data. So even though that the data are there, they're collected for tax money, it's much harder and takes a long time if we will manage to do it. So regarding the sorry for the spelling error in the CGG, the project about using all these nice stored data for development of the AI ML-based decision support, it's going very slowly. So far, we all have data from one region, and we hopefully will get the data from the other 4 regions. Yeah, I really hope so. But it's just legislational kind of nightmare, whether all the pregnancy and fetal medicine and the postnatal data about the outcome. I mean, we have those data already. So regarding the next talk here, I say the Dutch, they're coming fast. So this is my last slide. So I think that unfortunately, Denmark, we started out fast, but we have become a snail. And I think we have to look at the Dutch about how to do things faster. Yeah, that's my brief status about what's going on in Denmark, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the day and hear more about these topics. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to talk about the home monitoring system in the Netherlands. First, I want to introduce myself. I work in the Amsterdam University Medical Center, which is actually a merged hospital from 2 academic centers in Amsterdam. It's located in Amsterdam, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I think I'm very fortunate to work there and also live there. And I'm also an expert in fetal heartbeat monitoring. So that's, I think, is one of the reasons that I was invited here. Well, I was wondering, I understand that there are people from different countries. So can you raise your hands if home monitoring and telemonitoring is normal use, normal standard in your country?
Just for the record, 0.
0, okay, then it's very good that I'm here. But although it's not standard procedure, maybe you can think of some telemonitoring and home monitoring applications in obstetrics. Can you think of something besides CTG monitoring? Okay, well then it's very good that I'm here. I will come back to that later. First, I want to tell you something about the Dutch situation. We have 180,000 births annually, and we have a lot more inhabitants than we have in Denmark, because we are with 17.3 million inhabitants, and which means we have actually a high population density. We are the second. We have the second highest most population density after Malta, because we live with 507 people per square kilometer. And in the Netherlands, we have 73 hospitals, of which 8 are academic hospitals, which actually means that, and you can see that on the graph over here, is that most people can come to a hospital. They have a traveling time from home to the hospital less than 30 minutes. And there are actually only a few areas, which are orange and red, who have traveling time more than 30 minutes, actually 45. Which is normal when you live on an island. So home monitoring is especially very helpful in rural areas. So when you go to a hospital within 30 minutes, why do you need home monitoring? That's an important question. But first, what's the difference between home monitoring and telemonitoring? Home monitoring is actually that there will become a nurse to your home, and she will do the daily checkups for the pregnancy. And when you have telemedicine, the devices are the same, but the patient will do it herself. So there's no need for a nurse to go to the home, and the patient has to upload the data. Well, I thought maybe there would come some examples besides the CTG monitoring, but not. So I think it's good that we have a look at this slide. There are a lot of opportunities in obstetrics for telemedicine and home monitoring. And I think CTG monitoring is well known and it's worldwide more in use. But there's also a possibility for pregnant patients who are asthmatic to have spirometry at home. And we can also have diabetic patients at home who have contact with the nurse every day, and she can upload the glucose level. And so there are a lot of applications for telemedicine in obstetrics. And in the Netherlands, we use quite a lot. These are some old pictures. This was in the early 90s when we started with home monitoring. And it's actually also garden monitoring because that's the privilege of being at home. You can do it everywhere in your own home. And when we started this, there was a nurse or a clinical midwife, I should say, and she went to the patient at home. So we had to use a car and we had to arrange a CTG monitoring project, blood pressure devices, and also temperature. And the nurse went there, she registered for 30 minutes and she would have a chat with the patient, how she was doing. And she did almost 6 to 8 visits a day, depending on the distance between the patients. Once a week, the patients go to the hospital and they will see the obstetrician and they will get a checkup over there and sometimes even an ultrasound. So that's how we started in the early 90s. That was in our hospital, Amsterdam University Medical Center. And because we started this project, we thought we have to do it in an RCT. We have to see whether there's evidence that this is better or maybe even the same quality level of care than when we admit people to the hospital. And we also wanted to know what the patient satisfaction would be and also whether it would be cost effective. So we randomized 140 patients, 70 admitted to the hospital and 70 to the home monitoring project. And the patients that were admitted were all high-risk patients. And they were admitted for hypertensive disorder or fetal growth restriction, post-term pregnancy, but also diabetes and some other smaller indications. We had as primary outcome neonatal mortality and morbidity. And we also had secondary outcomes like gestational age, admission rates, complications, and so the cost effectiveness. But as I said to you before, we are a very urban country. So why do we need the home monitoring? Well, if we didn't have the home monitoring, our labor ward and maternity ward would be like this. And even nowadays, the need for home monitoring and telemedicine is even more because we have a lot of shortage of staff. And we don't have the physical ability to put all those patients in a hospital. So it was a great success. We saw that there was no difference in neonatal morbidity and mortality. And we saw that also for the secondary outcomes, there was no difference. So the home monitoring patients had the same results as the people who were admitted to the hospital. And patients were even more satisfied, just lying in their own bed, being with their own family surrounding them and their own children.
These are also high risk.
Only high risk. Yeah, if you're not high risk, you are only midwife and you're not with an obstetrician. Yeah. And we also saw a great reduction of cost. You can see that one patient was admitted to the hospital. The approximate cost per patient would be more than $3,500 US. And when she's admitted to the home monitoring project, it was $1,500 US. So it was a great success, and we continued, and actually a lot of hospitals in the Netherlands, they followed our example. But the funny thing was, although it was cheaper, we couldn't get reinsurance reimbursement. So we did this without being paid for it. And in the Amsterdam region, we did it for our own patient, but we also did it for 7 hospitals surrounding the Amsterdam region, because they also wanted to have patients participating in a home monitoring project, and they couldn't arrange it themselves. So that means that from the early 90s, we had a steep increase in the included patients in the home monitoring project, and we see that it rises until 2015. And then the hospitals in the region of Amsterdam, they started home monitoring by themselves. And as you can also see that we started telemedicine in 2018. So there was no need for a nurse, there was no need for a car, and patients all did it by themselves. That's not the reason why the inclusions, the admission rate declines. I think one of the most important reasons was that we had less patients because we weren't responsible for the complete region. But the other thing is that our obstetric management has changed over the years. So we admit less people to the hospital because we think we can have more people just having in their own region without having been monitored every day. But I will come back to that in this slide. This slide represents indications in 2001, and you can also see the percentage of indications people admitted to the home monitoring project in 2021. And you can see that the majority is admitted because of hypertensive disorders. That's still the case. But in 2001, we had less patients for premature prolonged rupture of membranes. And we were a bit afraid that they weren't the right people to get into the home monitoring project because their risk was too high. But during the years, we have seen that it's safe to have those patients in the home monitoring project as well. So now 26% of the patients have premature rupture of membranes. And we also see that diabetes at first was an indication to go to the home monitoring project, but now it's 0. So our obstetric management has changed, and diabetes patients are not in a home monitoring project at all. So in the Netherlands, home monitoring increased. We have now in 2018, 26% of the hospitals offering it to the patients. And as you can also see in this graph, that we started telemedicine in 2009, and you see a very steep increase until 23% in 2018. This was before we had COVID, and I think during COVID, or due to COVID, I should say, there was a steep increase in telemedicine applications in the Netherlands. We saw that pregnant patients, they didn't want to go to the hospital because they feel a great responsibility to take care of their unborn child. So we had to do all kinds of changes in obstetric care, in our management, and also in the technology to make telemedicine an option. And we were very successful. So it was lightning fast, and when there were first a lot of barriers to get more telemedicine, all barriers disappeared when the COVID pandemic came to our country and to the world. There are certain conditions that you need to have a successful home monitoring, telemonitoring project. And one of the first and most important things, actually, I think, is the technology. And so you have to have reliable internet, you have to have access to technology, and people have to be digital literacy. There are different kinds of devices on the market. I think the most used device is the Doppler ultrasound and the external thermometer. Nemo Healthcare, which was mentioned by the previous speaker, they have also a non-invasive fetal ECG monitor, which actually has a great advantage because it has less signal loss, and you can place it anywhere on the belly and it gets a good signal. And with Doppler ultrasound, that's more of a challenge. We also have blood pressure devices. We have to measure the temperature. And as I said before, when home monitoring became telemonitoring, we still needed the same devices, but it was very good for shortage of staff, and we didn't need a car and we didn't need a nurse anymore. And so what you actually need is a good Wi-Fi connection, and people just have to have a mobile phone, because with the mobile phone, they can upload the data to the hospital. We don't have a special platform, but we have an email address, and the data will come in there, and a nurse at the hospital will look at it. And they will also, in their mobile phone, and tell about how they feel how the fetal movements are and whether they have any symptoms. And that works very well. You also have to counsel the patient and give the patient information about the risk of home monitoring and the responsibilities, because the patient has a responsibility to take care of herself. And she has to have some kind of disease awareness. She has to know when I'm not feeling fine, I should call the hospital and go over there, because only then it's safe. And the doctor and nurses at the hospital have to be aware that they have a responsibility for a patient in a home setting instead of on the labor ward or on the maternity ward. And we have to have facilities that we can admit the patients at any moment when there's a need to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the patients at home, they have to have caregivers, friends or family who can take care of them, because it's not, they're not allowed to do everything at home. Because when they're in hospital, they're lying in bed, and slightly mobilization, but it's not that they have to do some shopping or something. So they have to be taken care of. The home has to be easily accessible, and in the Netherlands, we find it of great importance that the distance from the hospital is less than 30 minutes. There were a lot of studies done on home monitoring and telemonitoring in obstetrics, and one is done by a friend of mine, Becker, and she did a hotel study, which was actually published in 2023, and there was also a recent review in 2021, and they all show that home monitoring and telemonitoring, that it's feasible. You can actually apply good quality trace and you can upload the data. So that's very important. But we also see that patients are very satisfied with the home monitoring and that in good maternal and neonatal outcomes. And it also gives patients empowerment because they can evaluate themselves, and that's very good because they're the captain of their own disease. And I think that's very important. And we actually improved the care, and not only in rural areas, but also in urban areas. And we have reduced antenatal visits, which gives us more time for other patients. And we have a better triage and adequate referral system for patients who actually have to go to the hospital. And it's very cost effective. And we also show that in the early 90s, but also this hotel study showed that it's cost effective and it can reduce cost by 32 to 45%. But it's not mentioned in the reviews, but I think the climate is also very important for the home monitoring, but I will come back to that later. Well, there are some barriers. When you get new technologies, there's always a societal anxiety about privacy violations, feelings of insecurity, and mistrust or exclusion. Because it's important that patients can actually handle the new technology. And we have to take care that the data which we store and which we send over the internet, that it's safe. And I think those are very important because otherwise patients who are the center of our treatment, they can be more victim and that's helpful for them. So what are future developments? I think that home monitoring will increase over the years, more telemedicine, I think, than home monitoring, but also a slight remark, because what I see in my hospital is that at first patients wanted to have the teleconsultation and other kinds of telemedicine, but nowadays patients prefer to go to the hospital and to see the doctor physically. And so we have to find a balance in that. And I was wondering, why do hospitals and why do the Dutch government want to have more telemedicine than we have now? Well, there are many reasons for that, but one of the reasons is the increasing healthcare costs. In Denmark, which is actually the gray line, it's rising even faster. So we have to do something about reducing the costs. And I think most of the costs for healthcare are caused by the elderly, the aging population. And we see that when you're 80 years old, you cost 30,000 euros a year. So when funds are going to the elderly patient, there are less funds for the pregnant patients and for other patients who also need care. So we have to do something about that. But that's not the only thing. I mentioned before the labor market shortage. In the Netherlands, nowadays 1 in 7 people are working in healthcare. In 2031, we will have 24,000 vacancies. So we need actually 1 in 4 people to work in healthcare. But we don't have the people. So we have to do this differently. And last but for me not least, we also have a responsibility to take care of our planet. In the Netherlands, the carbon dioxide footprint of healthcare is 7%. And the traveling movement that also contributes to the carbon dioxide footprint. And I think as healthcare workers, we have the duty to take care of a healthy planet. Because a healthy planet also means healthy patients. And I think telemedicine can achieve that in a certain way. So yes, there are challenges like privacy, further technical development and support, also connecting patient records, patient data to the records. And we also have to be aware that since there's the opportunity for telemedicine, that we still have the right, the correct diagnosis and the correct admissions. Because sometimes you can think, well, we have the whole monitoring. I'm a bit uncertain about the patient, I will later, but then it will actually give a rise to the admission rates, and that's what we really don't want. So to conclude, telemedicine can avoid hospitalization and dissatisfaction of hospital admission. It reduces maternal stress and disrupted family life, which is very important for our pregnant patients who have usually more children. It's proved safe and feasible. It reduces stress on the hospital ward. It reduces cost. And I'm happy to announce that since the 1st of January this year, there's reimbursement for the home monitoring. So that's it took us, I think we already knew it in 1996, and now it's 2023, but we succeeded. So not a really rocket, but okay. And it also demands self-responsibility. Thank you for your attention.
So if I take my regulatory science classes, so let me see if I understood correctly. So what you've done in the trials is somehow check for the safety.
Sporadically.
Huh? Okay, then I try to do that. So that means you have shown in the trial that it's safe. That it is safe. We looked at the harder outcomes like mortality, morbidity, and you couldn't see a difference. Yeah. So there was one exploratory trial, and then you've listed a couple of potential specific clinical performance criteria. So that's now regulatory science.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the most important? What is the most important specific clinical performance criteria? Is it that you can really have more time for less patients in the hospital? Otherwise, you would not be able to deliver kind of quality care. Is this the most important part of it to say?
Yeah, for me as an obstetrician, that's now this doesn't work. That's it. For me as an obstetrician, I'm speaking about yeah, that's the most important thing, because I spoke to a colleague from Munich, and we also have the same problem because the patients are traveling around Europe, around the Netherlands, because we don't have enough admission possibility to admit them. So even a few months ago, people had to go to Belgium because we couldn't admit them. So yeah, for me that's an important reason. I think for patients the most important reason is that they can stay in their own environment. That's very important. And yeah, the challenges is that I think still the technology and the privacy. Because a few years ago we started with another device for telemedicine, and finally, hypothetically, that could be Fetal, because they had servers externally. So that's always a challenge. Now we use a new system and we think it's safe, but also for patients that's very important. All the things that all the data are collected. Yeah, that it's safe. Not come in
Thank you very much. It was fantastic talk. I have two questions. The first one is, it took 25 years, something like that, to get reimbursement, even if you are the RCT, which is normally the highest level of evidence. And my question is why? Is it because your study was not powered enough? Is it because they are conservative? Why?
I truly don't know. I asked one of the colleagues who did the hotel study, and they also don't know why that was the case. The study in 1996 was powered because the hotel study actually wanted to include 400 patients, and they included 200, and after 200 patients, they could already see that it was cost effective and that it had the same complication rates, so that there was no difference. And in 1996, in the AMC, we had 70 in these arms, so I think that would not make the difference for empowerment.
The second question is, I'm a big fan, of course, of home monitoring and monitoring. What is the limit of equity for that? Because we've seen during COVID pandemic that if you have a big house, good social support, you can be very, very good at home. If you are in a more lower social status with less social support, living in not such good conditions, what is the limit at which you feel that it's not the best solution, or that you induce more inequity in society?
Yeah, well, I think the slide that I saw, that I demonstrated about the conditions that you have, I think most people actually, although they live sometimes in very small houses, which are very crowded, you can still achieve that, because usually in that communities, there are more people surrounding them who can actually take care of them. And yes, we do have some refugees which are totally alone in the Netherlands, and then we don't have home monitoring. We just admit them to the hospital. So that's a very important prerequisite for them to be admitted. Yeah.
You need still a hybrid solution to offer for those for which it's not a solution.
Yeah, we always have a check. Is this patient appropriate for admission to the home monitoring and telemedicine? And if not, we don't do it, because safety first.
Thank you very much for this impressive talk. I have a question about the future of telemedicine and home monitoring. So currently, you said the data is uploaded from the patient via email, and then how is it stored? Is it stored in a standardized way, or is it stored, for example, as a PDF in the clinical system?
It's stored in the PDF in the clinical system. Yeah, we upload it in there. We also have other telemedicine projects like blood pressure monitoring at home. And our hospital has a special developed a platform for which all data can be uploaded to EPIC, which is our electronic patient dossier. And so I think for the home monitoring, we can do that I think for the coming years. Yeah.
The following question would be, do you think about using AI algorithms for decision support system at this field, or is this maybe a development more far away?
Yeah, I think AI can be very helpful if we have a lot of data points. For this, we don't have that much data points, so maybe it's more like a logarithm you can develop without AI. And the thing with AI and CTG monitoring, I think is what we do, and because I also try to do some research on that point, is that we put all kinds of data points in the system that we, as an obstetrician, already know. So how can we be surprised that AI doesn't give a better prediction of asphyxia, for example, because we put the same data points in it. And I think then AI, the computer, is something like a second assessor. So I think there's a challenge to put even more data points, even the data points of which we don't think that they are important, because they might be of importance. So for home monitoring, I don't know. And for CTG monitoring during labor, maybe, but then we should do it differently.
Last question.
Thank you for the talk. I have a follow-up question to the transfer process. You said the CTG is done, and then the full set is transferred as a PDF, you said. We are concerned that during the process of the monitoring, an event occurs which needs a response. So in our setting, we transfer it online real time and have it, the channel only open as long as it's observed, like it is done in the hospital as well. There all the traces are observed. So how many times did you get in CTG which was surprising and needed intervention? What is your estimate? Is it 1%? Is it 5%?
I think it's very low, but what we do is we instruct all the patients at home to do the CTG monitoring at the same time. And they upload it within half after they're finished, they upload it right away. So we can see it live. We cannot see it live, but we always see it quite directly. And we instruct the patient because they know what's normal, and they so they know when it's different than the other days, they will also go. But not to put the responsibility to the patients, we do it like this. Everyone at the same time upload it, and the nurse will be ready to look at the CTGs. And sometimes we admit people because then we're not sure about the CTG because we see less accelerations. And then we let them come to the hospital and we do another trace. And I think it's less than 1% that people actually have to stay.
Yeah, but the question is, are you not afraid of a legal case because you monitor a fetal demise and you look at it an hour later or half an hour later and
Yeah.
you didn't.
Yeah, as far as I know, that didn't happen in all the years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think a good indication, good instruction, and knowing who has what responsibility is very important, and then you can prevent this, I think.
Thank you for being here. I'm very pleased to be able to contribute again to this really innovative symposium. Loud enough for you? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So my name is Fetal. I'm a senior doctor at obstetrics here in Munich in Fetal. And I'm working together with Professor Hassbagen, he's the head of obstetrics in our clinic, and with Martin Daumer on a project for telemedical prenatal care. So it's really impressive to hear what's going on in Netherlands. But now I will show you what's going on in Germany. Last year, I presented our first experience with home monitoring of pregnant women, and last year we just published this case report. We had a patient with an unclear cystic. Just over there. You see this in ultrasound. This was just an unclear cystic. Here, yeah. This is this cystic mass close to placenta and close to umbilical cord, and we didn't know what it is. It could be harmless, or it also could, could be dangerous for the baby. We just didn't know it. It was 32 weeks of pregnancy, and we decided together with the patient not to deliver, and we equipped her with telemedicine, not with home monitoring because there was no nurse at home. I learned it just with CTG for at home, and now we could prolong this pregnancy for 4 weeks. This was our first experience with home monitoring. The baby was fine. The baby was very fine. Yeah, and what was no premature birth. And last year I ended with this slide. We after that experience, we planned a study. The Delta variant of corona had an increase of adverse fetal outcome. The thrombotic and microvascular changes in the placenta leads on the baby side, so the baby was not growing. The good enough, and we have prematurity, and we also saw some intrauterine fetal death. And on the mother side, we had more high blood pressure and more pregnancy. So we planned a study with the objective that we would like to have a close monitoring of pregnant women during the corona infection and after that. And on the other hand, we wanted to reduce the visits in the hospital to protect the other pregnant patient and the clinical staff. So we wrote a study plan, and we worked on a really detailed contract with Martin Wistrium. And he has this question we also discussed now. How is it ensured that every CDG is seen by clinical staff in real time? And who is responsible if the pregnant woman writes a CDG outside the agreed time slot? And while we were still busy with our contract, Corona was changing, and Omicron, and we had no adverse pregnancy outcomes under Omicron. All the things we saw with Delta, we didn't have with Omicron. We didn't have one stillbirth with under Omicron infection, and also no other complications. Therefore, our idea for the study became uninteresting. And so we needed a new idea, and we came up with this concept. There are some risks of pregnancy which leads to a poor outcome of the baby and the mother. And these are postpartum pregnancy, high maternal age, hypertension, preeclampsia. And these ladies, they need a more close checkup than we have normally in pregnancy. And we want to avoid complications and at the end, the intrauterine death. And on the other hand, we don't want to deliver the babies too early. This leads to close monitoring and to many visits in the clinic or to the gynecologist. And now we have this study design. All pregnant women who need more closely monitoring than provided by the German maternity guidelines could take place in the study, and they are randomized into two groups. The one group are equipped with the home monitoring with a CTG and to take the blood pressure, and the other group has a normal checkup like we do now in the clinic. We will exclude thin pregnancies, patients who are not speaking German or English well enough, and also high risk with pathological CTG or an indication for delivery. These are the goals from the planned study. Does pregnancy monitoring at home using the two mobile fleet, which means CTG and blood pressure and the urine stick, has the same quality as controls in the clinic? This is the first goal. And secondary objectives are: what is the patient satisfaction with telemedical pregnancy monitoring? Does telemedical monitoring have a positive effect on the outcome of pregnancy? In the Netherlands, yes. Are CDG datasets applicable to the development and testing of AI or machine learning based applications? And will there be a reduction in the number of staff required? This is the sample size calculation we did for the study. At the
the histogram shows the individual probability of whether the CTG recording at home will be successful. And here in the first one, the variability between the pregnant women is small. You see all here, the most women are successful writing the CTG, and there are less women not successful with CTG writing. And here's the other scenario. The variability between the pregnant women is very large. Some rarely get it correctly, and while others are close to 100%. And then we decided to use the scenario in the middle, in between, and it comes to a number of 75 cases to get a good power. And this now is a long road to starting our story. First, we had the plan with the corona infection, then we had a while for the contract, then we needed the other idea, and after that we got a veto from the Data Protection Commissioner because because in his opinion, the topic of data protection was not covered in the contract well enough, and for that reason we had to do another agreement on the processing of personal data, and we have this now, and these are really 16 pages we need in front of that. Okay, and in the meantime we got the sample size calculation. Now we wait for the ethics statement, and I hope very much that we could start in a few months with this study. Yeah. And in the meantime, we are chaining experience with another patient. So it's good for us to learn how it works. And we started here with this patient just now at the moment. She is 36 years old, and she had premature rupture of membranes in 30 weeks of pregnancy. She was a while in our hospital about for 3 weeks. She got antenatal steroid prophylaxis, and then she had really a big wish to go home, and she had a little son at home. She wanted to stay long, and she is also a physician, also her husband. So she got our CTG home monitoring, and her husband is drawing the blood every day and doing it in the clinic. And we have every day this CTG in the clinic, and it's worked now for 1.5 weeks very well. So thank you very much.
Very much for this overview, which I think we call the German rocket.
Yeah. So there are words in between. It's really impressive. The German way. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I should say it is moving fast, because there is a more depressing story that some of you know, because we did a study as the Symposium was a spin-off company 20 years ago. Telemedicine with the outcome is feasible, and women liked it. More than 90% would recommend it to a friend. It was absolutely safe, and it did not take. I mean, there were some friends in a couple of countries it was used. And we could go later on secret, no publication. And there were 2 reasons why there were agreements among some of the physicians not to do it. There was liability and reimbursement. These are the 2 real reasons, not medical reasons. And this is a bit depressing. On the other hand, liability, I think, and reimbursement, hearing now the good news about the Netherlands, they will go away, and the rest will be with GDPR and so on. Once this is fixed, I would hope that then. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, my pet peeve, the AI approach. I really like that you put it in the study, and that you want to evaluate the potential use. And from my perspective, 75 persons sounds like a very low database. Do you have a larger database available where you like train the algorithm with, or?
Yeah, this is not the first step, and we have 75 per group with 150. That's good enough for our first study.
But if I can add, we store fetal heart rate tracing in the same format since 15 years. So we have 100,000 of hours of CTG traces, which could be connected to obstetrical outcome data. But I think you have to group it in two parts. That's peripartum monitoring, which is difficult. We mentioned it, all the obstetrical influence, and prepartum, antepartum monitoring, which is more stable. And there I would look at with AI before. But this is a feasibility study to overcome the reluctance in Germany. And the outcome should be, it's the same, whether you monitor in the hospital by a trained midwife or by a trained user. And we just have to go through this process because nobody cares what is done in the Netherlands or achieved anywhere else.
And that's so frustrating because all of those studies, they cost so much money. And you think, well, there's so many research which not have been done, and you can also spend this money for other research. Why is it so hard for us to trust other researchers, whether it could be successful?
Yeah, everybody wants to reinvent the wheel.
I thought only the Dutchies did that.
No.
But
That's one of the reasons why we have this meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe one thing to add, so maybe to your question. So with this decision supported analysis, we do not start from zero. So also 22 years ago, we started with an implementation of the fetal guidelines in an algorithm that's working on that. This is used in the clinic, in many clinics, and then it's also on the server that is now assessing these. So in my view, it starts already on a high level. It was meant to be developed for in-clinic use, but with the data that is going to be generated now, there can be some fine-tuning. Because FIGO is, I think, established standard, and a very good start with that. Make improvements, otherwise, we would be right. 75 patients per group is not enough to blow it.
So my name is Claudia Hansen. It's a Swedish name because my husband is Swedish, but I come from Germany. And I have been working now since, so I left actually Germany to work in Tanzania now 23 years ago, and I've never come back. But I can't. So my name is Claudia Hansen. It's a Swedish name because my husband is Swedish, but I come from Germany. And I have been working now since, so I left actually Germany to work in Tanzania now 23 years ago, and I've never come back. But I contacted to write an ERC application together because the places I work in Africa, there is CTG used for less than, I would say, 0.5% of all pregnancies and births. But I'm not talking about CTG today, but also about regulatory issues. So what I'm presenting are two projects where I work on, and the projects actually take an idea of, which is an old German idea. I think the study was published in the early 90s on having perinatal registries, trying to get individual-based data from women for every birth. And by leading these projects in African countries, I have gone through quite a bit of issues and so on, which are actually similar to what we have discussed today. So it is one project which is called ONGESA. It's using smart paper technology. And that's a technology where you just write on a paper, it's scanned, and the scanning makes data out of it. And the second one is more the traditional using a phone or using a tablet to enter the data. So, and the experience from the first project, so called Smart Paper Technology, as I said, was to improve actually the present health management information systems, which is used in 70 low and middle income countries all over the world. And that's the first line. So the health worker traditionally document on paper, so typically registers. Then they sit once a month, summarize the whole thing. They put it in so-called tally and summary sheets. Yeah, and then these sheets are moved, driven to the district capital, where then the data is actually entered. So what we did with our smart paper technology is that people were writing on an individual paper per patient, and these papers were then driven to the district capital. So you here see, so either it's a manual entry of the summary sheet, or in the downline is then the manual entry, is the scanning. It's a traditional scanner, the scanning of the papers to actually have then the data. So this is an antenatal form where you make the ticks per patient, and then it's later on really scanned the scanning machine, and then you have the data and you can use it. So there was a huge enthusiasm actually for the people. So it was traditional implementation science. So what do you think about the data and how is it used? So it was well appreciated. It improved really accountability because every sheet needed to be signed. So that was really very, very good. And as you can imagine, it didn't take any time because you write anyhow as a health worker. But the project put us quite a bit off, because it was implemented in parallel, and actually I would say, and I will explain later, not with the right people, so we didn't have enough power, so the people didn't document, yeah. And you see here this line is the data we got, and this was the data we got on deliveries in the years before through the traditional system. So we can only conclude our data are not good enough. And not because of the system, but we didn't have the power. Yeah, so the project was actually powerless to really enforce that the system was used. Quite difficult now to, I would say, really to publish. But let's see. So then the other one, the other project is a traditional, I would say, traditional system. Where we put in data as said, in a mobile phone and a tablet, really like the traditional what we do in most countries, the perinatal registries. Yeah, so only at birth, not using antenatal care data. So that is a project in 4 countries in Africa. It's a typical European Union country. So we have quite a bit of partners, and then you start with all your agreements. Yeah, we started off 2020 when we just had GDPR. We need ethics. I said I will never have a project again with 4 countries. Getting 4 ethics application, and there's a yearly renewal often in Africa. It is quite a challenge. Then somebody has forgotten and they can't do. Then your trial somehow runs out of the order. And then we had a lot of problems also with the GDPR, because it's funded by the European Commission. So there is an ethics and data review from the European Commission. Yeah, and that means that the African countries have to follow European rules, but they say that's not our business. We have our own rules. Yeah, and then it's really a muscling up. They have solved the problem, but it was a lot of really talking and trying to find somehow the loopholes really with data safety, because we also want to have the data safe. Particularly smaller organizations or some universities do not have a server which is safe enough for the European Union. Yeah. So, and then, but the countries also don't want that the data are leaving the countries, because it feels for them terrible if the data are actually in the cloud and they feel they can't control them. So, but we managed. So we are still going on. So, but the other hurdles was actually really to get the data quality. So as said, so we use RedCap, which is a quite clever system, and we were also allowed to move then the data from all countries into our RedCap server as Karolinska Institute, which is very good. So this is how we improved really the data entry at the very start. This is an example from Malawi, and you see we really had to have weekly meetings and weekly follow-up. Because we wanted to get all births, yeah, and it is additional work for the people. So you need a very strong follow-up to get the data really complete. So we did this over 1.5 years of really having weekly meetings with all the teams and weekly continuous really data checking. So then we also had quality data checking. So are all the items really included? So we have something like 70 data points. I made a short list of 10 data points also on consistency, what the teams really have to check. We also did do dashboards so that they have some kind of feedbacks also for the teams that they know. So it's not only that they input data, but also something is coming out. And now after 1.5 years, I also can say we have wonderful really data showing here some information, but I also must say, so it took us a lot of time really to get into this. So I think this is something what the obstetrician will intuitively understand. You see here these nice WHO icons, which are actually showing obstetric risks. So it's a so-called Robson classification, and here we lumped perinatal mortality together into the low-risk groups, 1 to 4, and the high-risk groups, which are, for example, twin delivery, breech delivery, and previous cesarean section. And you see the stillbirth rate, so the teams now can somehow really see, and that's what I see in the data. So we have a huge amount of stillbirths because of mismanaged breech, and then you actually can do interventions because you know this now. So now the data are becoming also for the midwives, some are live, so these are things which they can really act on. So just as a small side thing, so I'm bringing you to a setting where actually we will have half of the world's births in 20 years, and where they are today really in these low resource settings, 2 million babies dying every year. So just to put it also in connection, there are 10 million births in the European Union. Yeah, so it is really something which we should not forget. And as I said, there is no CTG monitoring in most of the births. And I'm really quite proud that we have now this really fantastic data and that we can continue working. But just also, I put this in this morning, so also to show what you are actually, if you use such, what I always call real data. You see here, we had different outcome variables, which actually has shown to be quite clever. So at birth, at 1 hour after birth, at 1 day, and at discharge, and then you cross-tabulate them. And then you see that not all babies which are in one variable alive actually has been alive in the other. So you have quite a bit of discrepancy. So meaning, and also you have quite a bit of so those who are actually then discharging the baby or discharging the mother often doesn't know and don't and fear actually to ask the mother, so what's actually now with your baby? So so you see here that there are something like almost 400 where we don't have where the outcome is unknown at discharge. If you make the percentage or not a catastrophe, we have made now quite a bit of algorithm to say, so at this point, this variable, I think, says more the truth than the other one, but I have been really working through with the teams. We have to reduce the stillbirths which are discharged alive. Yeah, so just to reduce the discrepancy.
So the other thing from really pulling the results now, my learning from these two projects really together is it's very important to work with the right stakeholders. We as researchers, so I typically work with research institutes, yeah, but they often don't have the power to actually mix in the difficult political things which are going on. Similar, actually, what has been discussed here before. Yeah, so then it has to be the right innovation at the right time. So I think in view of all the digitalization, actually, our smart paper technology, which should have been the right thing 10 years ago, is outdated because the people actually want to enter the data straight away in a mobile phone. Data literacy is really increasing. But then also, and that is a typically quite forgotten point, so the skills and competences of the team really to use the data is quite low. So I would need actually another mode in really to do only capacity building. So use data, do the analysis, write papers, yeah. So which we really do not work, and also with the teams actually working on the clinical skills, so that the diagnosis is really done. Yeah. So then on just a word also on the quite difficult environment where we are working on. So we are, I feel, a super small research projects. Also, EU would say with a 4 million, you have a lot of money. Yeah. So, but there's a huge competition. So, for example, in Tanzania, there are 4 systems at the moment which are trying to go by digitalization. I will show a little bit more of this. One is really an excellent idea of Autonomous, but it's implemented with the local government and not with the Ministry of Health. A lot of funding, but then actually it stopped half time. Aftercare is another system which one of my PhD students told me. I haven't found anything on the internet. I don't know who's implementing it. The traditional DHIS2 is the thing which is working in 70 countries in high and middle income countries. This aggregated data, and then Tanzania is also trying something new, and that is now coming from the Ministry of Health. So the Good Thomas was a wonderful system. So I found some which really tried to do and tried to implement in a low, today middle income countries, all the things which we are dreaming of, yeah, of electronic medical record, automated systems also to build the state's quality improvement system. But then, as you can imagine, so it was underfunded, it was not really scaled. It was, for example, when I looked at it first time on a non-secure server, yeah, it had obstetric variables where I thought, okay, who has designed this system? So, as said, so it's a small project, and there's a very strong competition, and all these big players. The Americans typically have the big money, and they put it in their own NGOs called PASS, JAPIDO, and so on. So leading us that we actually have to do a lot of stakeholder investment, and that is again something which is extremely time consuming and takes a lot of time because and also quite a bit of money, and northern research institutions are not very well connected actually to all this policy exchange. So it's not easy but manageable to work around the legal system and all the GDPR issues, but it needs really also quite a lot of thinking and experiences, and we have been, so I must say, so we have been training now our institution also to find ways and how to find the right words actually to make it to make the things really fitting. So I can understand, and I put in here also the word of decolonization. So the countries want to have their data, they don't want to go it out, and we have again actually in this project the situation that the people, because we in the end do not have enough money for capacity building, yeah, are not using the data enough. Yeah, so which is really painful, and I also hardly know how to overcome it. Yeah. And then I also realized that many of the problems where I still see data issues, not only that stillbirths are discharged alive, but also other things, are somehow a lack of clinical skills, and also the really looking, okay, this I have to document, this is something important. So it's another thing which is really clinical and not only data. So these are things I have been going through in the last years, and so all not that we did wrong, but really continuously really working through the problem. And I would be so I will try to work really that this idea also of the perinatal registry is taken up much more, because I see now these are quite exclusive data for this specific setting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very impressive talk for the setting. Now I have one question. I mean, there is, I think, consensus in the literature, in some positions. The CTG monitoring was introduced decades ago without proper validation, leading to the fact that it is overused in the US and in Germany more than 90%. When you mentioned in these states, that you mentioned it's less than 2%.
It's less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Yeah.
Now, I think, I mean, you told me that there are new guidelines for Germany with somehow the idea to decrease the number of CPGs that are needed, not for in the UK as well. I mean, not for illness pregnancies and so on. And here's an opportunity somehow, given the fact that it may be not enough, yeah, to do it right. Yeah? And I think in one of those forms I've seen that there are in those hospitals that use CPG monitoring, that they have a triage system that could be red, green, and yellow boxes. Do you know how they determine who should be eligible and who should not be eligible?
So I think it is rather at the moment just simply the rich people who go to the church hospitals who get the CTG. So I think that's the triage.
Yeah, but I mean, the data she showed a perinatal mortality of 15%.
No, it's not 15%. They are 5% indeed.
What is it? It was at least in the Robson categories.
It's terrible. Yes, it's really terrible.
It's 15% in the higher category. So there you can with small adjustments, like changing the birth mode for breech presentation, you might make significant advances. We are talking in a zero tolerance market of 6 promille, so 0.6% overall perinatal mortality, even including everything from 24 weeks up.
But you can do trials in this setting. So when I look through the data, I think the first thing what we will try now is to do a training on how to deliver breech. Yeah. So that has nothing to do with the CTG actually. So this is just simply, do you know how to manage a breech? And my gut feeling is that it's not trained in pre-service schools.
But
yeah.
Coming back to the German regulation, on the other hand, you have the legal side, and we talked about it. So in every case where a child is not able to put two puzzle pieces together at kindergarten, the obstetrical situation is challenged. And the latest challenge is coming up from the insurance companies when they switch at the age of 18 into another system in Germany. And when they have recorded or accumulated a lot of therapy, the insurance company looks up 18 years later whether there might be something with the delivery. So we are under completely different pressure.
But this is extreme ends of regulatory science. I mean, the medical decisions are driven by these liability financial issues and not for the well-being of the patient.
But you don't
Yeah, but the society had to tolerate then some numbers and some issues. I mean, I would be interested how the Dutch comment is, because they have this high home delivery rate and switching now, as I heard, to hospital care because they found out that home delivery has its certain disadvantages if you want to have 100% healthy babies.
Yeah, I think the main reason that we have a lower, we have a decrease in home monitoring is that we see that most of the pregnant patient, the laboring patient, want to have an epidural. We can't do that in the
Even in Holland.
Even in Holland, yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the most important reasons. Yeah, because I think in the low risk groups, or when you have your second baby and you've proven to be that you can deliver a first one without complications, the second one is hardly a problem. But still, those women want to have an epidural, then they go to the hospital. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm really hugely impressed with what you have achieved in that setting. Just one question about the challenges that you were mentioning about data governance, GDPR, decolonization. In my experience, it is quite challenging when you conduct an implementation piece of work where research is embedded in that one. And I wonder if you could disentangle that. Is the challenge related to governance of data for research, or is it data as a sort of an implementation aspect of it that it would be used using clinically, or is it sort of a magnification because you combine both into single projects?
It's actually at the interface of this. So we had a long discussion, particularly with the first project. Is this actually now research, or is it actually standard data? That's also why we had to do this double data entry, because it was a research project, and then it was handled as research data. And then you have a little bit less decolonization pressure. Yeah? Because if it's not a research project, then Tanzania, for example, very strictly says firewall, no data goes out of the country. Yeah, but then, for example, the NGO, so it was so the smart paper technology that was from a registered entity in Sweden. They say, but we cannot process data which are not on a GDPR confirmed protected server. So they said the data, so that we can do the, because the data has to be cleaned also, it has to leave the country because, yeah. So then you say, then maybe it was not necessary, but then you would run around in the country and knock on all doors of international organizations. Do you have a server with GDPR stamp? Yeah. Which you have. So it's not that they are not in the countries, but not everywhere. And it would then also disqualify, for example, smaller NGOs because they don't have. Yeah, so it makes the, yeah.
Okay, so, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm not from your field, but I do have a few insights into Malawi and Uganda, where I do quite a bit of business. Could you comment if, not for the elites, but for the masses of people, losing a baby is a different perspective in those cultures as it is here? Because when I see a little bit the way how things work there, if you lose a baby, it's okay, it happens. It's a little bit of a different acceptance level as here.
It looks like this, but it's not for the women in the end. It's an equally traumatic situation. So if you really do the research and you ask the women and you ask them also to voice what they don't dare to voice because of their culture, then it's the same sentiments.
Okay, the next question is also pretty obvious. If you said already, or you mentioned, you need to have the right time to get the product on the market. So who needs to be trained or needs to be educated that you use those things so that you have a much higher acceptance rate?
So, on the other hand, just to put it also in perspective, so when I worked in Germany 25 years back, so I did love the perinatal registry. I did do the quick summaries for my colleagues, but nobody else was ever interested in this data. No, I can look at my cesarean section rate. I can look at, yeah. So I found this interesting. So who in our settings actually does this kind of constant quality check? Yeah. So maybe today a little bit more, maybe because it's also you have logbooks and so on. So it all takes its time.
Well, it's one of the requirements of a perinatal center to do a conference every month, and we do that on a monthly basis and look at the data on a monthly basis.
But
otherwise, you lose your certification.
Yeah, but was this 25 years ago? When did it? Okay, but Munich also started the perinatal registry. So the clinic I was trained, it was not. Yeah. So, just to put it in perspective, yeah.